in a context of punishment for unbelievers, states, "Are you sure that God will not cause you to be swallowed up by the earth when it is turbulent?" It is permissible to interpret these surahs as evidence of the awareness of great faults within the earth and of a turbulent interior, parts of the recent developments in plate tectonics. Other surahs seem to refer to changing dimensions of continents. Next slide. In a context of creation, Surah 70, Ayah 30 says, "And the earth," here in the sense of continents, "moreover hath he expanded." Next slide. Surah 13, Ayah 41, in a context referring to the power of God, states, "See they not that we gradually reduce the continents?" And in Surah 13, Ayah 3, in the context of creation, we see, "And it is he who expanded the earth and set thereon mountains standing firm and rivers." The concept of change in the geographic dimensions of the continents is a very modern concept. Perhaps the most intriguing thoughts are from a hadith in Sahih Muslim, where Muhammad states, as one of the signs of the coming of the Day of Judgment, next slide, that Arab areas will return to being fertile and green and with rivers. The archaeological and geological evidence that they once were green and will become green again is less than a century old. I have been asked, could Muhammad personally have known these things? The answer of a cautious scientist is, it is not impossible, but it would require a very sophisticated awareness of natural history. The Middle East has been and still is one of the more earthquake-prone parts of the world. Oral tradition may have mentioned fractures opening during earthquakes, and certainly the earth trembles as if its interior were turbulent on such occasions. In summary, the Islamic texts can be divided into three categories related to the past, the present, and the future. References to the past are expanding and shrinking of the earth, fixing of the mountains, deriving moisture from the earth's interior, and description of the past climate of the Arabian Peninsula. References to the present are the presence of great faults, a turbulent earth interior, and changing dimensions of the continents. References to the future are predictions about the return of better climatic conditions to the Arabian Peninsula. What is the significance of these statements made 1400 years ago, long before the beginning of the new science of geology? We need research into the history of early Middle Eastern oral traditions to know whether, in fact, such historical events have been reported. If there is no such record, it strengthens the belief that God transmitted through Muhammad bits of his knowledge that we have only discovered for ourselves in recent times. We look forward to a continuing dialogue on the topic of science and the Qur'an in the context of geology. Thank you.
The Qur'an on Scientific Facts and Discovery. Dr. Gerald C. Goeringer. Dr. Gerald C. Goeringer is Course Director and Associate Professor of Medical Embryology at the Department of Cell Biology, School of Medicine, Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., USA. Former winner of 1989 the Golden Apple Award. Gerald C. Goeringer's Ph.D. is in Anatomy and Cell Biology. The final speaker from amongst these world-renowned scientists will now tell us, as all the others have, that the scientific knowledge that was only available to mankind in the last century or so is in complete harmony with the Qur'an.
Mr. Chairman, eminent scholars, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted and honored to have this opportunity to be here before you and share some of these magnificent experiences with you. In this paper this morning, we attempt to briefly outline some of the milestones in the history of embryology by way of setting the stage for the analyses of most of the other speakers who will follow. Regarding many of the points we emphasize, you will recognize pertinent passages in the Holy Quran. Let us commence with a fundamental question of biological science, a question that has commanded the attention of scholars and scientists from the earliest recorded history through today. It is a question that is also documented in the Holy Qur'an. Simply put, it is, how does man develop? This question rings through the centuries, and the record of our attempts to answer it comprise much of the history of science in general. Therefore, the history of embryology is linked inescapably to the history of science in general, inasmuch as embryology deals with the genesis of all higher life forms. It is also closely related to the historical development of philosophical thought. Indeed, the scientist of not too many years ago referred to himself, and was referred to by others, as a natural philosopher. In broad terms, we can divide the history of embryology into three phases. The first phase, which we can call descriptive embryology, traces back more than 6 centuries before the Christian era and extends forward into the 19th century AD. This was the time during which observations of developmental phenomena were recorded and interpreted in various ways. Some of the earliest records survive from the 4th, 5th, and 6th dynasties in ancient Egypt. The official title, opener of the king's placenta, is on record as being held by at least 10 successive individuals. Later, a standard representing the royal placenta, may we have the first slide please, was carried ahead of the pharaohs. The properties attributed to the placenta were of magical or mystical significance. In fact, until the time of the ancient Greeks and after, science and magic were closely joined. It was the Greeks who elevated science into the realm of reason. This by virtue of the fact that observations were less often interpreted in terms of the mystical, but rather in the light of reason. In point of fact, were it not for a number of Arab writers, many of the earlier Greek works would have been lost to us. Centuries, scientific inquiry flourished, and the works of Vesalius discussed and debated. Now, this is rather short shrift for 3 exciting centuries. A coagulum of blood, the upper left, and seed, in the imagination of the author of this work, from this blood clot, Before discussing the rise of experimental embryology, let's turn, please. This 17th century development led to the publication by Ham and van Leeuwenhoek of grouped among illustrations of sheep sperm. What marvelous times these were. What controversy reveals a description of human developmental stages from the earliest through hath he created him. From a sperm drop he hath created him, and then moldeth him.